Hello and welcome to U.S. Cricket Daily, the world's first podcast dedicated to Major League Cricket. I'm Peter Della, Penna, and joining me as always is the one and only Aaman Patel.
Hey Peter, what a game we just witnessed, and we're here to bring everybody the latest on the match where the San Francisco Unicorns they squeaked by the MI New York to claim their spot in this year's playoffs.
And wherever you're listening to us in the world, we want to hear more from you. Just email us at hello@uscricketdaily.com. And don't forget, you can follow us at US Cricket Daily on Instagram, X, TikTok, and you can watch our episodes on YouTube. Just search US Cricket Daily, which is brought to you in association with Clyde Hill Publishing and its book imprints, Clyde Hill and Pulley Press, which are dedicated to founders, innovators, thinkers, and tankerers everywhere. Pre-order our book on the rise of Major League Cricket in America at ClydeHillPublishing.com. Well, Aaman, we've been crying for a close contest, and we finally got one. Our tears have been worthwhile in the end, I guess, as this one went down to the wire, down to the final over, down to the final ball, and it was the Unicorns who ultimately prevailed by 3 runs as they successfully defended a target of 149. They made 148 for 7 in their first innings, and MI New York looked like they were cruising for a large chunk of that chase, Aaman, and then they went from needing about, I think it was 62 off of 46, and then again it was less than 10 and over going into the last 5, which is always an equation that's in favor of the batting side, and yet by the final over they needed 20 to win, and then by the final ball they needed 4 to win, so it kept on going seesaw, 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 and until the final ball happened. And I think I want to start at the end and go backwards. Heath Richards, who finished with 24 off 13 balls, 3 sixes, coming in at number 8 for MI New York. He had been doing wonderful things batting orthodox shots, orthodox cricket, and then, do I want to call what he tried to do a mispa? A reverse mispa? 2007 T20 World Cup final over? What happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I think conventionally you're thinking he's just hit a couple straight back down the ground. They're huge, they're massive. He's scoring a lot of runs there. But you also think about the field positions and the field placements. You have third man inside the ring. You need 4 runs, so any bat on that is going to fly over the top. They pushed back that mid-off fielder, and you kind of know he's going full outside the off stump. So you're just thinking, okay, if I can just get enough bat on this, and this is a shot that Heath Richards actually plays quite often and plays it quite well. His first ball in minor league cricket, part of the Atlanta Lightning at Church Street Park. The first ball he ever played, walked in and hits a pacer for that very shot. That very shot goes over third man for 6. And so to see it pulled out, I wasn't surprised to see him pull it out. Was it the shot I thought he should have played? Maybe not, just because he'd been batting so well. But I can't fault him because of the fact that he works on that shot. It's not a shot he's just kind of made up at a random spot. He's worked on that shot. It's a shot that he plays well. And if it went right, we're calling him a genius, and it just happened to not catch any bat and go straight to the pads.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one, Aaman, because not so much the shot was the issue in terms of why he went for it or the situation he went for it. You have to keep in mind who's at the other end. Harris Ralph, whose nemesis is Grand Prairie Stadium itself. Final overs in Grand Prairie Stadium are not Harris Ralph's cup of tea. He gave up 15 to USA in the T20 World Cup, tasked with defending 19 in this over. It was going to blow up in his face again, and it was only Heath Richards who got too smart for his own good that stood in the way of Harris Ralph and another calamity for the Pakistani international and the Unicorns bowler. And to me, I'm thinking, here we're going to have Nitish Kumar par deux. This is going to be in the slot. It's going to be driven down the ground. It's going to go over the rope. And instead, Heath Richards tried to go over the other rope behind him. It didn't quite come off.
Yeah, no, again, you talked about the Harris Ralph. I'm sure he was having some flashbacks for it. But you saw the brain trust and Patty Cummins and Captain Corey Anderson come in and kind of talk through the situation. And to your credit too, Peter, it was there to hit. It was in the slot. It was, kind of a ball that we've seen Heath take down the ground. You're asking almost it's probably just a little bit too full from what he was trying to bowl, if he was trying to be on a length. And I mean, the looking back, I think Heath would have probably told you that he should have just driven it through the covers, driven it through wide mid off, and gotten yourself 4 runs. He just got a little bit too smart for his own good. I'm not going to fault him for it, just because I know that's a shot that he plays, and the thinking is right. And sometimes you let it all hang. And I think, win or lose, you talk about what Heath Richards did. He kept New York in that game. Rashid Khan was 14 off 12 and did some heavy lifting, but Heath Richards finished the game 24 off 13. Before that ball, he was 24 off 12. He was batting at 200, and he brought them to this point. There's a reason Rashid Khan just took the single from the final ball of the 19th over. He trusted Heath Richards to do it. So, did it go well for him? No. Do I fault the ideas here? I can't fault Heath for this.
I'll tell you what else kept them in the game, the Unicorns. Corey Anderson's decision making, literally the DRS reviews. Corey Anderson going for the DRS, and he had the wicket in the second over of Ruben Clinton. He had the wicket in the 10th over of Dewald Brevis, and then he had the wicket again in the 13th over of Kyron Pollard. 3 decisions, Corey Anderson, 3 successful challenges. He hasn't had a lot right going for him so far in this tournament, but half century in the first innings, and then 3 challenges in the chase. Corey Anderson, this might be his finest effort in MLC, even more than the 90-odd he scored last year, Aaman.
Yeah, it was kind of a prove-it game for Corey. He hadn't had the tournament that I think a lot of people expected. He got brought on as the captain this season and was one of the best domestics last season, and just hadn't come good yet. And so you're kind of waiting for it to kind of all come together. And I really did think that he did well with what he wanted to do. With the bat, came in a really troubling situation, rescued the day alongside Hassan Khan and alongside Hassan Khan, and got the game back to where it needed to be. Used Matthew Short, I thought, incredibly well. Was brave enough to give the ball to Matthew Short, even with the right-hander and Dewald Brevis there. I thought used Brody quite well, and Brody delivered. Even though Pat Cummins didn't have the greatest start with the ball in hand, kept going back to him. And, it just seemed like he trusted the people around him. Bringing in Hassan Khan for 2 overs. I mean, those are 2 overs that only went for 9 runs and led to a wicket. So I just thought everything that Corey wanted to do today kind of worked from a decision-making standpoint. And, I was really impressed with the things he did. So this was a good way for Corey to kind of, as they qualify, get himself in the right headspace. I think, when it's your day, and you can carry that momentum off. So not only did he do it with the bat, I thought his captaincy today was probably the best it's been on tournament.
Well, when was the last time you saw 3 successful reviews in a T20 match?
Yeah, I can't think of three successful reviews is quite big. And then you talk about the timings and the people he got out, right? Dewald Brevis was hit the half century. You weren't even sure if this was out. You know what I mean? Like, it was umpire, and not even the umpire had no interest in any of these. To be honest with you, the umpires were like, "Yeah, no, we're good." Like the Ruben Clinton one, the umpire was looking down. The Dewald Brevis one, even the commentators weren't really sure on it. The Kyron Pollard one was probably the closest of the lot, but even then, there wasn't a lot of interest. I remember when he took the review for Ruben Clinton, Matthew Short wasn't even appealing. Matthew Short didn't even go up. It was just Josh Inglis, and Corey Anderson says, "Yeah, sure, I think it's out," and it worked. So not only did he get 3 right, but it was 3 right where there wasn't a lot of. It didn't seem like there were a lot of people that thought that Corey would be right in taking that decision.
Now, the only thing he got wrong tonight, he's not perfect. It was a player of the match performance with the bat and a player of the match performance in terms of his captaincy, DRS review, decision making, and his bowling changes, except for one bowling change. When Liam Plunkett looked like he cramped up or he maybe pulled up a calf muscle or groin, whatever it was, at the end of the 18th over, Corey Anderson decided to bring himself on for that one ball left, and he conceded a boundary to Rashid Khan. So that's the only time he went wrong in the night, but we'll forgive him for that because his team wound up on the winning side in the end. Now, we talked about Corey Anderson and the fight back. I mean, this team, 33 for 5 after 7 overs.
Yeah.
We were messaging before we went on air, and I was talking with our producer Ollie, and he was saying what a tremendous fight pack it was for the Unicorns, and I'm saying to him, Ollie, I would have preferred not a fight back because at 33 for 5, it looked like they were going to get bowled out cheaply, and we could record this podcast an hour and a half earlier than we're going to air now. And for the viewers out there, I'm sure they got their entertainment value seeing the Unicorns fight back and seeing the match go down to the final over. I personally would have preferred to have recorded an hour and a half ago, so we could have gone on to other things, but the Unicorns decided to make life a little bit more interesting for us, Aaman, and a little bit more interesting for the audience as well. Just to come back from where they were, I mean, Nash Kenjige, what an incredible spell he had. How often do you see any bowler, let alone a spinner, bowl 4 overs to start off a match in a T20? Nash Kenjige bowled 4 straight, 2 for 13 in his 4 overs, and at the end of it, he had a run out as well, teaming up with Monang Patel to get Sherfane Rutherford out on the final ball of the 7th over, and they were 33 for 5 after Nash Kenjige's carnage. And yet, Hassan Khan, Corey Anderson come together, and they put on an 87-run partnership, and suddenly the match came alive. And again, I said to Ali, I said, yeah, they made it interesting for us. They've delayed our podcast recording by an hour and a half, but MI New York should have this easy. And not the first time I've been made a fool of in my life, and won't be the last, but incredible stuff from the Unicorns.
Yeah, I think that, starting with the bat, Nash Kenjige got off to a hot start, took wickets of Finn Allen with the tremendous catch, got Matthew short, and you're like, holy smokes, they didn't play Jake Frazier McGurk, and now you're starting to think Sanjay Krishnamurti's out there, Josh Inglis hasn't had a great tournament, Sherfane Rutherford literally just got off the plane, had one practice session, it seemed like, and is out there in the middle. Hassan Khan has had a kind of a lean tournament, so has Corey Anderson. What can they do? And, Corey Anderson proved why he got given the captaincy spot, why he was one of the better domestics from last season, why he got called up to the USA team. Hassan Khan showed why he was second pick in the draft and why a lot of people thought he was going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft because of what he did with the bat in hand in minor league. Really at this venue as well. He had a couple games there, and he batted at 180 in minor league. A 180 strike rate is ridiculous, an average close to 45 runs for the season. So this was a guy who was really handy with the bat in minor league and has shown his worth. And again, it was just a partnership about surviving, and they just kept themselves together and hit the bad balls when they came and just made sure they didn't do anything stupid. I thought Hassan probably was maybe a little bit impatient rushing Rashid Khan and getting out there. I thought they could have probably added a couple more runs if him and Corey are in for the last 3 with no Rashid Khan in the attack. But even with that being said, it was an incredible partnership that got them back into the game. And we mentioned where the Unicorns were to where they ended up. I was texting Andrew Leonard, who is on his travels out to Belfast and doing the Scotland series. He's on his travels out there, and he's not able to. He wasn't able to access the game, so he's asking me to fill him in. And when I filled him in, Dewald Brevis was on 51, Nicholas Buttern out there in the middle with them at 16, and they needed 78 from 64. That's what they needed, and they come up short. And if I would have told you, Peter, hey, Dewald Brevis is going to score 50. He's going to be out with Nicholas Buttern. There'll be 1 down, and off the final 64 deliveries, they need 78 runs. You'd tell me MI New York's going to win all 7 days of the week. And it was a game of fight backs from the Unicorns. They took their matchups and they attacked when they could, and this was just a game of them showing some grit. And I think that was probably the biggest question about this Unicorns team was there grit? We saw them collapse earlier this season with the Texas Super Kings, and they were nowhere to be found in that game. This was kind of a similar story where they lost wickets early. This was a game where they kept their wits about them. They got back into the game with both bat and ball and ended up on the right side of it.
So much insight in that answer from Patel, so much analysis there, but arguably the biggest insight of all is that I'm now well down the pecking order in Andrew Leonard's WhatsApp list. Apparently, he's now taken Aaman Patel as his go-to source for all things happening in cricket and American cricket.
We were just having a conversation and happened to get brought up. That was all it was. I sent him a picture from what happened last night in Mooresville, and it just happened to get brought up here. I'm sure you're still higher than me on that pecking order. I'd be willing to bet.
I don't know. See, you're golfing with Lenny now. You're doing the WhatsApp texting with Lenny. I'm the low man on the totem pole now. I'm completely out of the picture. I tell you what else is fascinating is all the things you mentioned. Another thing that sticks out to me: 33 for 5 after 7 overs. The Unicorns were, and Rashid Khan still hadn't bowled a ball yet.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they were able to fight back, not just in terms of the broad sense, but who they fought back against, having to recover with 4 overs of Rashid Khan. And I thought they played him quite intelligently. They didn't take too many risks. He only finished with 1 for 26. You said you thought Hassan Khan could have waited a little bit longer to attack. Wait to the end of Rashid Khan's over. That was the 17th over that happened. If you just see off Rashid Khan's final over, then you can target the last 3. But the fact that they held their nerve in the face of who they had yet to come against in the bowling attack, that to me was mighty impressive, and it showed the maturity and the experience of having a guy like Corey Anderson at the crease.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, I thought their approach was brilliant. Nosh had already finished it out. They had the one spinner in Rashid Khan, and then there was that little X factor of Sunny Patel getting his first game in Major League Cricket, and this was kind of a thought I had, but when I saw him in the team, I said last time MI New York threw a domestic leg spinner at Corey Anderson. It was Sarbjeet Ludda last season in Dallas, and Corey Anderson scores 91 runs. And I said, wouldn't it be fitting if Corey Anderson finds a way to score some runs off Sunny Patel today? And Sunny Patel, in his 2 overs, go for 28 runs. They saw the matchup, they attacked it. And again, it was, like you mentioned, having someone like Corey Anderson down the middle who's played so much cricket, who's so experienced, I think it really helped his team and didn't let them panic like it has other times this season. They kept themselves within the game, and they picked their matchups. They took Romario Shepherd 4 runs. He went for 31 runs in his 4 overs. Took Sunny Patel for runs. They worked around Rashid Khan, and they knocked around with Kieran Pollard. Even Trent Bolt went for some runs there amongst it. So this was a very knowledgeable batting attack from the Unicorns. And again, with the ball in hand, Corey Anderson did the right thing as well. He made the right changes at the right times. And this was a game about who was going to outlast the other team, who was going to be the first team to break. And I thought, compared to what was a great day from Corey Anderson as a captain, I thought Kieran Pollard didn't have his greatest day as a captain today. I didn't think the Sunny Patel overs were really a great choice from him. I think I would have rather seen Pulley bowl 2 more overs, to be honest with you. I didn't think Sunny Patel was going to have much success, and you have a left-hander, and you said, no, we're going to throw him out there. And last time you saw that, runs were scored. I just thought it was a very average day for Kieran Pollard, who's so experienced and is a great captain. Just didn't have his best day versus Corey Anderson, probably his best day as a captain so far.
You mentioned Sunny Patel, just his selection in general. I think a lot of people are going to be curious about. 37 years old, he's qualifies as a domestic player for the purposes of MLC. And he essentially came in at the expense of Stephen Taylor. Now, Stephen Taylor, for those of you who did not watch the last match that MI New York played, continued a poor run of form for Stephen Taylor. He was bad with the ball. He was bad in the field. He didn't score runs. And if looks could kill, Kieran Pollard looked like he wanted to tear Stephen Taylor's head off after the chance that he put down in the field. More so because he just didn't get himself in proper position. The ball was in the air forever. Stephen Taylor is somebody who, when you see him take a one-handed diving catch in the slips against Pakistan in the T20 World Cup, you expect him to take sky chances that, by comparison, are fairly straightforward. And that one didn't go into his hands. It went down on the turf, and Kieran Pollard looked like he was ready to do something not nice to Stephen Taylor. And yeah, that not nice thing turned out to be not being in the 11 anymore today. And again, it calls into question. I was surprised that he was retained after his performances last year as a first-round pick, $75,000 slot, he didn't play every game. And that was partly because he didn't perform when he did play. And he's coming off a T20 World Cup where he did not do very well for USA, especially with the bat. He scored at a strike rate of under a run a ball throughout the tournament. And he looks like he may be on the decline. And yet, again, locking him in for a second season at $75,000 when you weren't playing him in every match, and the matches you did play him, you didn't get much value out of him, to see him on the bench again, which is justified based on his performances against this year, I wonder what possessed the MI New York think tank to retain him.
Yeah, I mean, with Steven, it's not a question of talent because he's got loads of it. It's just it comes down to execution, right? And I think he'd be the first to tell you he hasn't executed the way he'd like to. And you mentioned the retention of Steven. I look at really the whole New York offseason as kind of a question in general. I didn't think they did a great job in the draft addressing their needs. I think Ruben Clinton has really outperformed what people would have expected from him. But what do they need? They had guys like Dewald Brevis and Nicholas Budin who could bat up top, and you retain Steven Taylor and Monang Patel and Shahin Jahangir. So there's 3 top order bats. Shea kind of can bat a little bit lower. We've seen Steven bat lower at times, but the 3 of them tend to do their most destructive work up top the order. What you needed was people to bat down low. And you could have tried drafting a Jamar Hamilton, who was available for them to take, and bats at number 7. I get that they love their middle order, but last season, when honestly they had their best run, why was it? Well, Dewald Brevis got into the team and scored half centuries leading into the playoffs. Nicholas Budin came to bat at 3 and was able to score the runs that he scored. Right? It was after Pulley got hurt, and you're not gonna sit Pulley, but he's also he hasn't had the greatest tournament either in his own right. So this was a team that I don't think learned from what happened last year. I almost think winning the title is hurting New York this season because they got away with 2 wins on the year last year, and then Nicholas Budin and Dewald Brevis putting on a masterclass. And then they go back to the same formula that they started last season with, where they weren't having success. No Dewald Brevis, Nicholas Budin comes in around 4, 5, and we're going to rock with Kyron Pollard, Tim David to do the heavy lifting in the middle, and neither of whom have come good. Suddenly you put Dewald Brevis in for back-to-back games, he's got a half century to his name already. Nicholas Budin is still Nicholas Budin, even though he didn't have the most fluent innings today. I think they could really benefited from a domestic bat down low the order, i.e. Heath Richards. Look what he did today. If you were to add, I think Jamar Hamilton would have been a great option for them. I just think that they didn't. I think winning the title changed how they saw themselves, and I think almost winning cures everything. I think winning just made them think there weren't any problems, or all the problems had just magically gotten fixed for those couple weeks in the playoffs.
Well, they're going to need to fix things in a hurry because as we look at the points table, they are currently sitting on 3 points. I'm going to mention at the top of the show that San Francisco Unicorns have qualified for the playoffs. They've got 7 points from 5 matches, and you might be saying to yourself as well, how could they have qualified for the playoffs already? Because the teams behind them, LA Knight Riders in 4th place are on 5 points, and then MI New York are on 3 points. But the difference is that MI New York only has 1 game in hand. MI New York, the best they can do is 5 points. Seattle Orcas, they have 2 games in hand, but the best they can do is 6 points. So both the San Francisco Unicorns and the Washington Freedom have clinched playoff spots as of now. And it's looking pretty good for the Texas Super Kings as well. LA Knight Riders, Aaman, we're not going to be recording for the next 2 days. We'll be coming back after the conclusion of Sunday night's match between LA Knight Riders and MI New York, which is almost a de facto playoff match. If LA Knight Riders win, they clinch a spot in the playoffs. If they lose, depending on how quickly MI New York beats them, this is the other thing, MI New York's net run rate is inferior to LA Knight Riders at the moment. So not only does MI New York have to win, but they have to win by a decent enough margin to overtake LA Knight Riders on net run rate. And then the other thing that has to come into the equation for MI New York, they need to hope that in spite of the fact that San Francisco Unicorns have clinched a playoff spot, they're hoping that the Unicorns will still play something close to their best lineup on Saturday night, because the Unicorns will be taking on Seattle Orcas. And by contrast, the Orcas are going to be hoping, maybe Pat Cummins, he's had a little bit of a strenuous time. And Corey Anderson, gosh, he worked really hard the other night. Maybe he needs to put his legs up and have a bit of a rest. That'll be an interesting thing to observe, the player selection in particular for the Unicorns going into that match. So there's some very important contests coming up. We've got one starting tomorrow night between Texas Super Kings and Washington Freedom in terms of jockeying for position at the top of the table. You get the advantage if you finish in the top two in MLC, where you can have a direct spot to the final if you win that 1-2 game. And if you lose it, you get a second crack, and you want one of those two spots as opposed to finishing in the 3 or 4 slots. So we got Texas Super Kings, Washington Freedom coming up tomorrow night. San Francisco Unicorns against Seattle Orcas on Saturday night. And then what is arguably the most consequential match of the weekend coming up in Texas on Sunday night, LA Knight Riders and MI New York. What is most appealing to you about the upcoming slate, Aaman?
Yeah, I think I'm interested to see how Texas looks in that game there, because Texas kind of got off. They've started to pick things up, and so now interested to see what they're able to do against Washington, who's presumably the best team in the league. You mentioned lineups. Does Washington put out their best lineup, or do they say, "Hey, Steve, you can come off for a game"? Andres, you've played a lot. Let's go put Lahidu in. How do they change things up? Do they try to see what some of their domestic spinners have? They say, hey, Emilio Ponzo, come with the ball. Yasser Muhammad get in, or maybe Rakalesh Bartagam gets in. I'm interested to see the team combinations there. And for Texas, it's a big game because obviously you mentioned the top two. They win, they can kind of force San Francisco to have to beat Seattle to get into the top two as well. So I don't know if San Francisco is going to be sitting anybody there, because you can qualify for that top 2 spot. So that's what's interesting about those two. And then with LA and New York, these are two teams that almost have similar problems. Not enough runs from the top of the order, and it's kind of been killing them in most of their games. And the games that the teams have won, LA, it's been off the back of Unluk John half centuries. And for New York, when they were winning, it was because the bowling was great and Nicholas Buterin was scoring a lot of runs up top of the order. So these are two teams that have kind of matched this season. And it's also kind of a funny point to be in that this game decides who makes the playoffs, because last season it was the cream of the crop of MI New York who won the whole thing, and then the LA Knight Riders who didn't win a single game in Major League in 2023. So it's a curious it's a fickle little game we have where the winner of that basically gets their way into the playoffs.
Now, time for some audience feedback. And again, a reminder, you can contact us at hello@uscricketdaily.com if you want to send us a question to be read out on air in a future episode. We'll start off with Josh, who says both of last year's MLC finalists, the Seattle Orcas and MI New York, have struggled this season. Is that down to their performance or the improvement of teams like Washington Freedom? Well, Aaman just touched on part of the reasons why MI New York has struggled, and on a previous episode we also talked about Seattle Orcas. We feel like Wayne Parnell's absence has been very significant in terms of the Seattle Orcas. I think when you look at the Freedom, and we talked about this as well earlier in the season, one of the things that makes Freedom so good is supply and demand. They've got arguably the two best U.S. domestic players on their roster. They got the best bowler coming out of the World Cup in Sarvin Chavalkar, and they've got the leading run scorer for USA in the T20 World Cup in Andres Kraus. And there's a very short supply of quality domestic players in Major League Cricket in the player pool. And when you've got the best two on both sides of the ball, that goes a hell of a long way to having a successful team. And then you add on top of that Travis Ed and Steve Smith and what they've been doing this year at the top of the order. It's a pretty incredible combination. Aaman, do you have anything else to add to respond to Josh's question?
Yeah, no, I think you hit everything on the head. I think another thing for the Orcas could just be some fatigue for some of those guys, like a QDK, like a Heinrich Clausen. They've gone from the IPL, which was a long tournament, into the World Cup, which they were there for a month, had their hearts ripped out, and then 4 days later had to come play Major League Cricket. I think it's just hard to stay in that kind of mental headspace that you need to be in for that long a time, and I think it could play a part into why they're not firing as well as they were. And like you mentioned with Washington Freedom, I think that you mentioned the domestics. I thought counter to what New York did, I thought Washington's offseason was actually really well done. I thought keep retaining Justin Dill and then going and drafting Ian Holland. How great was that? Doing things like that, keeping Obis Pinar, getting Lehido Malanta to be basically your backup role for Andreas Kraus. They just have the best depth, and I think they've made sure all their roles are kind of filled out. They have domestic spinners that aren't even being used, but who are incredibly talented. And you mentioned probably the best bat and the best ball. I think maybe the most underrated player in the country, in Obis Pinar, sitting there as well, who can bat in any role, is really a chameleon, doesn't bowl in Major League Cricket, but can if you need it, and is tremendous in the field. So they just check all the boxes, and then obviously you got Steve Smith, you got Travis Head, Rachin Ravindra, Lockie Ferguson and company. They're gonna check, and Marco Janssen. They're gonna check a lot of boxes too.
Daisy asks, Cameron Gannon versus Ali Khan. Who, in your opinion, is the real superstar of U.S. cricket?
Well, I think if you're talking about, if you were to tell me, if you were to say to somebody, give me your favorite USA cricketer, or give me like the star of USA cricket, they would tell you Ali Khan. I think he's just the guy who's held the torch for the longest time. You always talk about him as the guy the kid from Ohio, the quick guy from Ohio, and he's just held it down in so many leagues across the world. He's kind of gone global, Mr. Worldwide, if you will. Cam Gannon's terrific. I think you can have an argument on who's more skilled, but I think Ali Khan, in terms of if you're asking for a superstar of USA cricket, and when I hear superstar, I think of it's like a brand name. I think Ali Khan's name probably ranks above Cameron Gannon's in terms of just USA cricket.
And just to expand on that point, I agree with you for a lot of reasons, but first and foremost, you have to think of where American cricket was and their stature and their sense of reputation and legitimacy on the global scene before Ali Khan emerged in 2018 to become a superstar in these franchise T20 leagues. He's essentially the first one who was getting picked in places like the CPL and Bangladesh Premier League and Pakistan Super League, and he's the first one to make it into an IPL roster. He didn't take the field. He had to leave early due to injury, but the fact that he was selected for an IPL roster, he's the first, and still to this day, only American to make it into an IPL squad. The impact that he's had in terms of elevating USA's reputation is hard to encapsulate, and the fact that he was on all the T20 World Cup promotional posters as the featured USA player alongside Shaheen Shah Afridi and Surya Kumar Yadav and Ravman Powell and some of the other guys who were featured. Again, that showed how well regarded he is in the world, and he can back it up. I mean, he had the player of the match performance against Bangladesh leading into the T20 World Cup. He starts off MLC with a player of the match performance in the first week of the tournament for LA Knight Riders to get their season off going right, especially considering the situation they were in that match, where it looked like they were dead and buried, and then all of a sudden he comes in against Texas Super Kings, gets Devin Conway out, takes 3 wickets and over, and is really a game breaker. Cameron Gannon is somebody who's been consistent for Seattle Orcas, but he hasn't necessarily had the sense of explosiveness that you get. Ali Khan will have some quiet games. Cameron Gannon is probably more consistent. You know what you're going to get out of Cameron Gannon from match to match, but Ali Khan has that match-winning potential, and he's shown it. And more than anything else, Aaman, he's also the cover boy on Inside the Selection Room, Quest for T20 Cricket Stardom, which you can get on Amazon and other fine...
Who wrote that book? Sorry, Peter. I'm just curious. Who wrote that one?
Some schmuck named Peter Della Penna wrote that book.
Oh, well, it sounds like a guy we should be buying books from. So I think I got to head to Amazon right now, Peter.
You know, if we can hawk Avita Burn Down Our Pavilion for James Coyne, who was a recent guest on our show, there's no reason I'm not going to be shy about making people aware that they can get a copy of Inside the Selection Room, Quest for T20 Cricket Stardom. Tom asks, Aaman spoke in the latest episode about playing golf with the media team. I'm interested to know, what one golf course would you both love to play at?
Jeez, where do you start? I wish I was good enough to play at the course I'm going to name, but I think Augusta is obviously like the creme de la creme. There's something about Masters in April, and then Pinehurst would be really cool. Being from North Carolina, it'd be cool to head down to Pinehurst number 2 and just see what what the fuss is about. I know I'd probably shoot about a 400 over those places, but you know what? It'd be the best 400 of my life, so I'll take it.
I figured you would say Pinehurst. You got to be loyal to your North Carolina roots.
So, yeah.
I personally, the Masters, Augusta, yeah, that would be nice. But I personally, if I'm thinking of places I visited, I haven't visited Augusta, so I don't really have the same sense of appreciation for it. I like to see things in person, and as wonderful as it is on TV, I had a chance to visit Pebble Beach several years ago with my wife. And we get to walk the course. It's a public course for people who don't know. Augusta, you need to be a member. You need to know a member to get into Augusta.
Yeah.
And Pebble Beach is a public course. You can get onto it. And I didn't get to play, but I got to walk Pebble Beach, and it is incredibly beautiful. Your reputation is earned in terms of the beauty and the scenery that you get out there in Carmel and Monterey, out in Northern California. And I walked it on because I can't afford it, because to play around out there, I think it's around $1,500 thereabouts right now, and that's after you have to book to stay in a hotel outside the course within the area, which a hotel night there I think is around $2,000 a night. So if somebody has a friend of one of the hotel owners or the starter or anybody else who's on staff at Pebble Beach who can hook me up, I'm not really in the position. As wonderful as U.S. Cricket Daily is, we're not getting paid $3,500 an episode to afford the greens fees out of Pebble Beach. But if somebody can hook us up, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't be a bad thing. But I think similar thing at Pinehurst too. You had to stay around the area, so there's no chance that I'll be playing Pinehurst anytime soon. But yeah, like you said, if there's anyone who knows anybody, let us know. We'll be happy to accept whatever good graces you have for us.
Pinehurst 2 is off limits. Maybe Pinehurst 1, Pinehurst 5, Pinehurst 4. Maybe we can get on one of those one day. I mean, we can
get on the short course maybe on the short course. Yeah, we might be able to get on that one.
Again, if you got any questions for me or Aaman, send them to hello@uscricketdaily.com, and we'll try and squeeze them into the next episode. We'll be back on Monday after the weekend of action concludes with that showdown on Sunday night, overnight into Monday between LA Knight Riders and MI New York. And also a reminder that coming up next week, we've got an exclusive interview with British journalist, broadcaster, and writer Aaman Rajan, who is kind enough to come on to the podcast. We've had some great guests throughout, and we're excited to have Aaman coming up as well. But that'll do it for this episode. On behalf of Aaman Patel, I'm Peter Della Penna. Thanks for joining us on U.S. Cricket Daily, and we'll see you next time.